Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hello and welcome to us here, and if you go check down in the description, there's loads of things to do. Come and join us on our Facebook group, there's a link down there. You can buy us coffee if you want. There is a little thing there that you can send us coffee if you like what we do. Remember, go check out Grendel Press, absolutely fantastic horror book company. They are so in tune with us, it is great, and I hope they don't mind us saying that, so go see them, follow, do all those things on the platforms, write us a review, tell us how great we are. You can tell us how bad we are if you want, but that's okay, we kind of ignore that because... Anyway, let's move on. Back to this week's episode, and we're back with Foxglove. Will and Fen. Well, Fen and I have paused long enough to kind of assess the current situation. I mean, I have to say we don't often stare at each other because we sort of feel where we both are. We don't need really to see each other, we just feel each other's whereabouts. So this is a bit bizarre. You know, I'm standing here, a naked human man, and he's just a wild wolf soul staring, well, we're both just staring into one another's eyes, which is a bit strange, isn't it? We're having that, I call it a zombie moment, when something arises that makes you stop and think for far too long, and you just stay static and still for far too long, with your gob open, you know, fly catching with fear. Me and Fen, we call it zombie time. Often the time that we stay like this sort of relates to how stupid, complex or deadly the situation we're about to face has become. I mean, it doesn't happen very often for us, but at times and places such as this one, they do cause us to consider and stand. I admit, it doesn't happen very often in our life. We sort of consider consequences to be something we worry about after the fact. At this moment, I couldn't even consider the consequences. They were unconsiderable and inconsiderable also. The current situation is that there is a glowing green fairy in my fucking car. And not just any glowing green fairy. Oh no, this is the, notice the double E in the glowing bright green fairy. The bitch of kitsch. The tiny terror, the winged sociopath that is Fairy fucking Foxglove. Fuck! I say out loud to the world. This little fairy is stalking me and is making me feel uncomfortable. Oh, you laugh. A big scary werewolf is scared of a little fairy. That, you know, the killer of demons and gods is afraid of a little teeny tiny eensy weensy fairy. That the beast that was thrown out of hell because the devil could not deal with him could have, you know, his courage fall at a teeny tiny weeny eeny bitsy itsy icklesy wickledy fairy wary. That are, well, fuck you, you fucking fuck-faced fucker of fucks. I'm fucking scared. Wow, that sentence alone probably screwed our YouTube algorithm. But, fuck it. There's going to be a lot more fucks given in this episode. It seems inconceivable to most that a teeny tiny beautiful green sparkly... I'll stop talking like that. Female fairy is stalking you and that you could be frightened. I have to say, you'd be frightened too. It should seem that it shouldn't bother anyone, it's only a fucking fairy tale, but I will offer you an example of fairy behaviour. A look at the fairy's nature from the man who was thought to make up a lot of the foremost fairy story. Look at... what's she called? Tink, that's the one, isn't it? Tink in Peter Pan. Yeah, I mean it. Look at fucking Tink. Oh, and you can say that J.M. Barrie is making up the characters of the fairies and stuff, but if we realise he's one of those people who saw the things they should not, between the gaps, his description of fairies is actually very accurate. Apparently, the professor had met J.M. Barrie and knows Sir Barrie, whom I love. The professor seems to have met every fucking famous person throughout history. Sir Barrie, according to the prof, Sir Barrie had spent some time in fairyland himself. Some evidence comes from how he was renowned from childhood for telling stories about his adventures with fairies. And as a consequence of spending time in the Fey world, where time passes weirdly, unphysicsy-ish, is that a word? Unphysicsy? He never grew above 5'3", Barrie that is, and always seemed a decade younger than he was supposed to be. What was that? Alright, sorry. Back to the point. Tink. Tink is a bit of a bitch if you think about it. Yeah, I feel like I could say that. Tink is a bit of a bitch at times. That is, she wants Peter and is willing to do almost anything to get him, including fucking murder. Oh, and the other easily missable evidence of the lifestyle of pixies and fairies is in one throwaway line in that very same book. It gives away a minor detail. It just gives it away. You get the point that this detail gives away what fairies are really like.
After a time, he fell asleep, and some unsteady fairies had to climb over him on their way home from an orgy.
Yeah. We will repeat that.
After a time, he fell asleep, and some unsteady fairies had to climb over him on their way home from an orgy.
That is genuinely a line in Peter Pan, the children's book. The fucking children's book! Written by a man who thought he was going to be a Calvinist minister. A minister, a godly man, talking about fecking orgies. You see? Hopefully, I am convincing you that it would not be sweet that this little thing has a soft spot for you. It should be, but it's not like that. She is, she's able to make me feel uncomfortable at a range of 300 yards. It's weird as fuck. The fairy has been in a few episodes by now, and I hope you understand what she's like. She's 6 inches of sex-crazed psycho. Imagine the stereotype of the Catholic schoolgirl who's been in a single-sex environment, obviously assuming that the girl isn't gay, because that would be the perfect environment for her. I'm quite sure an all-female environment full of adolescent hormones is a perfect sort of place for a young lesbian or bisexual or whatever. But let's assume that they are neither of those things. I mean, lesbian and bisexual and others. And that she's been told that the most delicious thing that she can't do is fuck. Well, take that massive need for doing it and times it by 100 and you get the fairy sex drive. The fairy sex drive. Sorry, I had to add the double E again. I mean, I've got a high sex drive, but the fairy makes me look like a Vestal Virgin, whatever one of those is. What is a Vestal Virgin? It made me feel uncomfortable, her sex drive. Also, if we were to, how would that be, possible? Yeah, I don't want to think about it either. What the
The professor. It was time to go and do some work. It was time to go and find somebody. That's not it. It was time to go and find some things that could help shed a little green glowing light on the fairies. Spill the green beans. It was still difficult to believe I'd need to investigate the fairies. Maybe that's been the reason I hadn't found this fiasco earlier. My lack of belief. I laughed at myself. I didn't believe in fairies. Or at least, I should say, their ability to be the bad guys. Damn. I would have to leave instructions for Vaunt. Vaunt is my housekeeper, maid and undead, reborn thingy. Whatever. I found her as a child in the foothills of the Carpathians. Yes, I know, a cliché vampire trope. She was not a vampire herself, she was something else. I first brought her back simply to study, but then got to rather like the little, creature. It's a bit strange having her around the place. It's like having a cat-shaped person about. She's very cat-like. Well, she is a werecat. I don't have time to go into the details, or her here, but I will do in the future. She does come with some peculiarities. They're offset with how she keeps the house, though. It's absolutely immaculate and, well, utterly rodent-free. I don't like leaving instructions for her. It often leads to a smile and a nod, which, well, you know, it's very cat-like with those sharp teeth and that wink and that winky blink of hers. I know. It's a weird thing to notice, but she doesn't blink properly. She winks with the right, and that wink flashes milliseconds later into a left wink. So it's a sort of a blink, but not really a blink, because it's really two winks, and for some reason, it points out her lack of humanity. My instructions would be necessary, though. She did not drink coffee herself, so she would have to be told to put out the stale beans. I'll have to leave a very specific note there, I think. For I didn't get through the whole word before she stood in front of me. Goodness me, she was quick. Yes, there you are. Could you get me my weekend bear? I tried to catch up with myself. There was a thud of my ancient leather satchel at my feet. Ugh, I finished. I didn't see her move. I really didn't. We'd used fancy technological cameras to try and catch her moving in the past. You know, like those boffins can do. But no matter how we slowed the film, she never seemed to move between 2 points. She just was there. Can werecats teleport, do you think? She blinky-winked at me. Nothing else on her face moved. It was an emotionless porcelain blank of a mask. Oh, gosh, yes. Thanks for that. And my Henry Poole over. I stopped. I might as well. There was no point wasting my breath. She instantly stood before me, holding the set overcoat aloft and ready to help me put it on, which I did. As I settled myself and gave myself a look over in the mirror, she fastidiously removed the lint. She didn't do this at high speed. She seemed to take her time, sometimes using her rough tongue to remove bits that wouldn't easily be lifted. Oh, don't worry, I'd got used to this, and she didn't mark the material in any way. She also had the horrible beige Hornby hat she liked me to wear in her hand, and it was on my head and patted down into a cocky angle before I knew what had happened. No thanks, Vaunt. I'll leave this here if it's all the same. I get enough odd looks from the populace dressing as I do. I find the Hornby is a little non grata at this time, I said, smiling briefly. Her face soured for a moment, then she disconcertingly winky-blinked again. It always threw me a little, I have to say. Everyone blinks, I know, but she wink-blinked, and on top of that, she didn't do it often enough. Made my eyes sting just thinking about it. And it made me uncomfortable because you knew it was coming, but timing it was impossible. It was like those irksome snorers who make snoring worse by having no rhythm. They stop and restart, and then they stop again, and you think they've stopped, but they haven't. They've just stopped before a restart. The utter bastards. They give you 5 snores in a short period. You know what I mean? If it had a perceptible rhythm, it would be okay. Anyway, thank you, V. Could you chuck out the coffee beans and reorder them afresh? She nodded. I'm going to have to get going, I'm afraid, Vaunt. Do enjoy your weekend. She's done it again. Yes, you guessed it. She was utterly gone before I'd finished my sentence.
Will again. I steel myself for the interaction that was about to happen. I'd left my clothes neatly folded on the passenger seat of the car. I like to keep things neat. Well, you know me. Oh, you might want to know what kind of car I'm driving. Oh, you don't? You don't care? Oh, fuck yeah, I'm going to tell you anyway. It's an Aston Martin V8 from 1987. It drives like a dream. Honestly, it's beautiful. I mean, the only issue with it is trying to get the prior owner's bloodstains out of the carpets. I mean, cream carpets. Cream carpets in a car. You can tell the car is a child of the 80s. I walked up to the door of the wonderful machine. My concentration was taken for a minute by the car itself. Its paintwork is immaculate and was superb. And I mean, it was a darker shade of blue than I'd like, but you've got little choice when you're going to go and take a car. You know, it's not really a paint option, is it? There was music playing in the car. This was strange. I had just taken the keys off the top of the rear driver's side tyre. The windows were a little steamed up, but I could see the diminutive figure glowing in the dark. At my approach, she had adjusted her clothing and positioned into something she thought to be, I don't know, something more provocative or sexy or something. In my head, I could feel the situation start to build up my anger. The tune on the radio was Wham. Do you remember Wham? Yeah. And it was a careless whisper. And somehow I'd grasped and opened the door just in time for the saxophone solo. I tried to get the saxophone solo, but it just copyright slammed me. Sorry, guys. You know the one, though. Yeah, I'm not going to try. The little fairy was looking really good. She always did. I mean, she was radiantly beautiful. She was all glowing and sparkly. Against her green skin, she wore a dress that seemed to have been tailored from real petals. Red rose petals. Well, if I were to guess, I don't know my flowers very well, but her eyes were just a little too large for that face, and she had purple irises. She was the basis of many, many anime characters, I reckon. Her hair had been expertly teased into some sort of 80s hairdo. I mean, it was big and in a bouffon shape type thing. I think she may have tried to add to her size by adding a lot of volume to that sparkly purple hair. She did indeed, and I have to say, she did look incredible. I even noticed her bare feet as they were just perfectly, is it pedicured or manicured, or it's fingers that are manicured, isn't it? And they were pedicured and painted, yeah. She acted shocked at my entry as though she had not set up this whole scene, and very badly acted pulling her dress down to cover herself. Trying to offer the idea maybe that she was a respectable, young, old, I don't know, how old are fairies? To offer the idea she was respectable, whatever that is. And she opened the conversation with,
"Oh, what a shock. It's you, Will. Oh, and your big doggy. I did not realize this car was yours. I was just passing and saw this beautiful thing and wanted to meet its obviously tasteful owner."
I could feel Fenrir bristle at Big Doggy, although he kept his own response private. I knew his anger was building inside him with every passing second. God, she was confident for a little tiny squishable fairy. But not to be distracted, I had to remind myself that this was not just any fairy. This was not the cute, sort of helpful fairies of fairy tales. This was the fairy. Again, notice the double E and D. Get used to it. This was Fairy Foxglove. There were at least 10 humans worth of rabid cycles spooned into that tiny body. As she turned and fluttered those hypnotic sociopathic eyes, I felt her try to place the glamour on me. I saw and felt her blow. It was a blow that included a little tiny fairy dust cloud from her palm. She was on full attack. Seduction. It was something that I needed to avoid. I hope it was an attack. The other thing, the seduction, nah, I don't really want that. The dust trickled and tickled into my nose and I sneezed. She looked quite shocked as I wafted away the sweet-smelling dust and stood before her. She was used to the Fey world getting sort of high and friendly with a dash of the dust. My wafting and sneezing was not an expected outcome, but I'm a werewolf. We can do that kind of shit. Poisons and stuff don't work very well on us. Thank fuck. Instead of the confused high fawning thing she expected, she had a naked man offering her a little rage. I could see that this reaction to her wiles had thrown her on her back foot. God, you've got dirty minds. Back foot, back wing. She's a fairy. But she adapted quickly, falling back into the sexy, sordid seductress almost immediately.
Well, my goodness,
she said, bringing her hands to either side of her face in fake shock.
My goodness, Will, what does Red Riding Hood say? Grandma, what a big... You don't just have a big doggy. That thing better not be a grower. Well, wow, you put centaurs to shame,
she said, smiling and eyeing my privates. Fuck's sake. I responded calmly and unflustered, looking at her and trying to cover, not trying to cover my inhibitions, I suppose. If I tried to cover my self, she would have taken that as a little victory in this conversational chess game we were having, apparently. As she stared, I started talking. Okay. What do you really want, Foxglove? I asked. She seemed frozen, looking at my crotch for a moment, and then flinched into action.
I just wanted to say hello and see how you're doing. How are you doing? You look like you're doing very well,
she said, smiling, leaning back and looking down at my parts. She looked at me with a little bit of displeasure. Could you pass me my boxer shorts? Please, I asked her, putting a hand out towards her so she could place the boxers in it. It took her a few moments to respond, but once again she came back to life as though it was a shock, and she took my underwear off the dashboard. Why were they on the dashboard now? Oh God, she hadn't been. Ugh. Foxglove lifted them with a tiny index finger of her right hand and offered them to me. She was going to make me reach for them. I tried to snatch them from her hand, but she moved quicker than I, and the underwear landed on top of her. Oh God, it was planned, covering her for a moment as she giggled and disturbingly took a deep sniff and sighed with, pure wolfman.
Wolf.
I reached over to the passenger seat and lifted the boxers, uncovering her lying there as though in some sort of satisfied rapture.
Oh!
She mouthed as I revealed her. She slowly opened her eyes, batting her eyelids and stretching her perfect little form in certain very effective ways if she was built to scale. I tried to pull the pants away from her, but she held on tight, and it just gently lifted her to standing from her seat.
Oh, so strong,
she gasped. Fen had just completely fucking lost it at this point. I won't go into too much detail, but his monologue being sent into my head battered around in it. He was enraged by the fairy.
Oh, is your doggy upset?
she asked in a cute but very patronising manner. The wolf soul, in response, tried to gather himself, although I could feel he was at a boiling point and there was no chance he was going to do that. I grabbed my clothes and started to get dressed more hurriedly than I would have wished, and as I did so, the little woman lay back, observing me. She gently rubbed her thighs together and showed unsubtle signs of enjoyment. I felt wrong. It felt wrong. It was all wrong. Eventually I sat in the driver's seat and looked at her with all my attention. I repeat, Foxglove, what the fuck do you want?
Well, you might ask if this is for business or for pleasure.
She sinfully sibilated, now lying on her front, her head towards me and stroking a perfect fingernail down my black 511s. Fen had now joined us. He'd climbed into the back of the car and was cramped and fucking angry. It's not for pleasure, Foxglove, I told her vehemently, spitting the words out and quickly pulling my leg from a touch. She flickered a very angry micro-expression at this removal of the legs and rebuilt her face to look happy. Tell her to fuck off, said Fen from the back. Fucking flower fairies! If she does not get the fuck out of this fucking car, we will fucking fuck her fucking up. Wow. The fairy and I both turned to him in a little shock at the amount of fucks in that sentence. The wolf's soul could never look embarrassed, and his body language is difficult to discriminate by those who did not know him, but I could tell he was somewhat, what would you say, rankled? He had managed to make a sentence where the primary word of use was fuck, and it really had made complete sense. After a few more gentle mutterings telling me to get rid of her, he dropped into silence and a bit of a huff. The fairy and I turned back to each other if nothing had happened, and we shrugged at each other with the same semi-shared understanding of what had just happened.
You don't want pleasure?
She asked me. I placed my left hand on the wheel and looked to push the key home in the ignition. I paused before driving it home. Foxglove.
Call me Foxy.
She butted in, patting her freed strands of hair back into her perfect hairdo. I shook my head at her. Foxglove, please understand that this is me rejecting you nicely. If you know me in any way, which I fucking assume you do because of your stalky nature, I don't often give warnings. I returned my focus to finding the ignition with the key. This way I didn't have to see the results of my response that were obviously being exhibited by the fairy. I just heard the huff and the noises and the shuffling feet that she gave. After some moments of scrabbling, I eventually rammed the key home in the slot, sat up and turned to her. She was now sitting on the dashboard, looking out of the window, tears in those beautiful eyes. Her legs were crossed and so were her arms, and even her pretty wings were crossed, which was a bit weird. She turned away as I looked at her so I could not see those tears running from her face, which she tried to wipe away.
That hurts a lot, Will. I'm only a woman sitting in front of a man thing. No need to be so harsh.
I felt really bad. Why did I feel bad? Then, as though nothing had happened, she turned to me and let a glorious smile rip across her face.
A job, then?
She said. I looked incredulous at her. Of course, I forgot the psychotic part of her, a brain that could swing wildly left and right with vapid fluidity. Foxglove, I don't need a job, I told her as I turned the key. The engine whirred once and then nothing more was heard apart from the starter motor trying to engage. Click. Fuck! I yelled as I slammed both hands on the wheel. The fairy giggled in response.
Oh, Will, have we run out of petrol in this secluded spot, which is little delicate me and a big, strong, lascivious werewolf and his dog? Oh, what's gonna become of me? Please take advantage of this situation.
She overacted her shock and lifted her hands as if to ward me off. She turned her face away like a true damsel in distress from the films of the 1920s. Don't you mean, don't take advantage, Foxglove? She turned her face into that of overthinking this and that, and she raised a tiny little finger to her mouth to sort of show that she was even more considering this, like they do. And she shook her head in the worldwide recognised body language symbol for no. I laughed and tried the car ignition again. Nothing this time but a click.
Oh dear,
she said now standing on the seat, a very little too close. I sat back in my seat to get away from her and stared at the roof, shaking my own head. She's obviously fucking nobbled the car, said Fen. I know! I barked. And then knowing it was not Fen I was annoyed with, I apologised to him for my outburst.
Oh, how wholesome you two are. Such good twee friends. Anyway, there's a job that you're going to do for me.
I sat forward and laughed in good humour at this. There is. You are going to make me do this work, are you? I asked. Fen was also laughing at this. That's amusing, he managed to say. Foxglove crossed her arms and paid a lot of attention to her nails while she waited for us, kindly to stop laughing. As we settled, she tapped her foot, taking her interest from her hands to me and then to Fen.
No!
The voice was different. It sparked something feral in my brain.
No, you will not laugh at me!
Her eyes were filled with pure violence. They shone now and gave off a cowing displeasure. Shit, this was a powerful being indeed.
I'm giving you the choice to do this without me having to force you.
I paused and considered her for a moment. She was a little terrifying, to be honest. Then, of course, that little part of us that, likes to throw us under the bus smiled back. I was gonna do something stupid, something really stupid, but it would be fun. I laughed and bent to release the bonnet catch. I heard it pop open and turned to the little woman, making deep, concentrated eye contact whilst opening my door to get out. Fuck off, Foxglove, I told her as I held her eyes and made my way out backwards from the vehicle in order to look at the engine. Her eyes were set on mine, her jaw was set, she was set. I was pushing her to see what she did, what she had, but I had to win this fight, this eye contact fight. I know it's pathetic, but this felt more like life and death than it really should. I was trying to hold eye contact with a fucking fairy. She would have to be the first to break the eye contact, to show that she understood my point, which she did. She just broke eye contact, which is weird. She lifted her eyes to see something above my head and beyond me.
Bertram!
She screeched, and then my world went black.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast, a serial killer drama.